Booktube, my name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reads for March the 10th of 2018. As usual in this video, I will talk about all the books that I read this week and let you know what I am currently reading. I have 6 books to talk about in this video, so I'm going to try and make this as concise as possible, but we'll see. I'm actually going to try something new, and in the description box below, I'm going to list, I always list the books and, you know, their links on Goodreads, but at the very top I'm just going to give you a quick list of the book titles, and then beside it I'm going to put the timestamps on where they are within the video. So in case you're only curious to find out my thoughts on a certain book, you can just definitely just go and click on that and watch that part of the video. So I hope some of you might find that helpful. I know a lot of you enjoy watching like the full video and these can get kind of long, but I just thought if there's somebody just coming to my channel and they're just interested in hearing my thoughts on one book, that's how you'll find it. So to start off with, what's in my mug? I don't have a mug tonight. It is actually late. It is about 8:30 on Saturday night. And time change tonight, guys. For those of you following daylight savings times, we spring forward an hour, so we're going to lose an hour this weekend. It's been a long day, or a busy day for me, I should say, and this is the first chance I've really had to sit down. So yeah, my mug. I don't have one. We went out and grabbed subs for dinner, Firehouse subs. If you guys have one in your area, they are so good. But I stopped at 7-Eleven and I got a Slurpee just because I had a craving. So it's a Dr. Pepper Slurpee. I'm not a big soda or pop drinker or whatever you want to call it, but every now and then I get a craving for a Slurpee and I just have to go and get it, and then I'm good for another month or so. So that's what's in my mug. Booktuber shout out very quickly. I'm actually going to shout out Kim, aka Sissy, and her channel, The Romance Queen of Booktube. I've talked about Sissy quite a bit on my channel. We did the Romance Readers Readathon together back in February, and the tag. I adore Sissy, and I just like talking about her and her channel. She has 3 little kids, and she reads a lot of Harlequin, and that's part of the reason why I found her and why I fell in love with her channel, because there are so few of us who actually talk about Harlequin books. And yeah, her stuff is really great. She's always doing hauls and things like that. She also reads a lot off of Kindle Unlimited, so if that's something that you have a subscription to, I personally don't, but if you do, she often does recommendations there as well, so please go check out her channel. I will leave it linked in the description box below. She is also the host of the Facebook group for the Harlequin monthly readers group that I'm a part of, so I will leave that linked in the description box below as well. So let's jump into all the books that I finished this week, guys. To start off with, the first book that I finished was The Perfect Match by Kristan Higgins. This was book number 2 in the Blue Heron series. It was narrated on audio by Amy Rubinate, and it was published in 2013 by HQN, which is a subsidiary of Harlequin. I gave this book 5 stars. I could not give this book anything less than 5 stars. I wanted to give it 10 stars. I suppose I could. You can give whatever star rating you want personally, but Goodreads will only allow certain star ratings. They don't allow half-star ratings, which still drives me crazy, but anyway. And it has an average rating on Goodreads of 4 stars. I got 3 challenges completed out of this one. The Triple RC challenge for March, number 7, which was for St. Patrick's Day, which was to read a book with like a green cover. There's a lot of green on this cover, so I counted it. The 2018 Where Are You Reading, I got the state of New York for this one because this one takes place in Western New York, is it? Like the Finger Lakes area of New York. And for the fairy tale spellout, I got the P for Frog Prince and the K in Ugly Duckling. Guys, I love, love, love this book. I think if I truly had to pick an absolute favorite Kristan Higgins, it would be a toss-up between this one and The Best Man, the first in the Blue Heron series. These are just so brilliantly written, and to listen to them again on audio was just such a thrill. This is the story of Honor and Tom, and Honor is Faith's sister. Faith was the lead character in the first book, in The Best Man. And she's been in love with this guy since she was in school, and they've kind of had a friends with benefits type of relationship. And the book begins on her 34th birthday. She's in her early 30s, some birthday. And she's at the doctor's getting her yearly women's tests done. And the doctor's pretty much telling her that, you know, her it's going to get harder for her as the years go on for her to conceive a child. And, you know, essentially her eggs and stuff like that are starting to get old. So there's this great internal dialogue throughout the entire book of her talking to her eggs that are getting older. And the longer the book goes on, the older they seem to get, and it's actually hysterical. It doesn't seem like it would be funny, but it really is. And like, she's like, and they're in there putting on their bifocals and learning how to quilt and, you know, things like, and it just goes on like that, them getting more and more geriatric as the book goes on. And it really is a great little side thing that runs throughout the whole book. So anyway, she decides it's time to maybe get married and try and have a baby. So she asks this guy that she's been seeing and in love with, you know, to get married, and he turns her down, so she makes it like a big joke. She finds out about a month or so later that he then turned around and hooked up with her best friend, and they are now engaged, and this best friend is now pregnant with his baby. So, you know, a lot of not so nice things happening. So she meets up with Tom, and she decides she's going to start dating. And Tom needs to stay in the U.S. For various reasons. I don't want to get into it. Read the book. But he needs to stay in the U.S. Now, he's from England. And he's over here on a teaching visa, but his visa has expired. But he wants to stay here. And it's kind of like they decide to, you know, get married for the green card. And then they end up, you know, having a relationship. And it is so, so good. The dialogue between the family members is hysterical. Honor's grandparents are just, they're just hysterical. There's a part at the end of this book that just had me crying. Not big, ugly crying, but again, sitting in the lunchroom at work, you know, just, you know, at this certain parts of the book. The narration on this was fantastic. I really, really like her narration. She did a great job with Tom because he does have that British accent. And yeah, I highly recommend these books. This entire series is great, but definitely at least get through books 1 and 2, because I actually personally haven't gone through the rest of the series. I haven't read 3, 4, and 5. That's on my list to hopefully get to this year. But I definitely recommend these first 2 for sure, and definitely The Best Man. I've said it before, sometimes you see these tags going around, and I'm not knocking younger booktubers, but you see it often a lot with YA booktubers where it's like, oh, who's your book boyfriend? That kind of question. And hands down, if I had to pick one, it would be Tom. I just love Tom to pieces. The next book that I finished this week was Rustling Up Trouble by Delores Fossen. This is book number 3 in the Sweetwater Ranch series. It was published, it's Harlequin intrigue novel 1527. It was published in 2014, of course, by Harlequin. I gave it 3.5 stars, and it has an average rating of 4.18 stars on Goodreads. I got 3 challenges completed out of this one. The 2018 monthly challenge, Olympian Gods and Goddesses for Aries. I don't remember exactly what this one was for. I think it was something to do with some sort of like a mystery or something like that. This was book number 9 for my Stacking the Series challenge, 9 out of 55 books completed. And for the fairy tale spell out, I got the R for Frog Prince and the D in Elf Mound. So this was an interesting story. I liked it. Like I said, 3rd book in the Sweetwater Ranch series. This one follows Rayanne, who is the half-sister of one of the main characters in the 1st or 2nd book. One of my issues with the series is there's a lot of characters. And, you know, it's one thing to have a big family unit, and that's great. But I really feel that you do not need all of those family members in every single book, because it can get rather confusing. And the thing is, with this character, Rayanne, she appears in the first 2 books, and I didn't much like her. So it was kind of hard for me to get behind her story. Do you know what I mean? You know, the author redeemed her in this book, obviously. I mean, she wasn't a horrible person, but she just wasn't the nicest person. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of action in this book, which is always great. She's really great for that. So the whole premise of the story is that Rayanne is a cop, and there are killers on the loose, and her ex has shown up, but he has amnesia, and of course she's pregnant. It's, you know, like every romance novel cliche kind of thrown into a book. But again, lots of action, lots of fun. I really did enjoy it, and I do recommend this series. The next book that I finished was Rock Courtship by Nalini Singh. This is book number 1.5 in the Rock Kiss series. It was narrated on audio by Justine O'Keefe. It was published in 2014 by TKA Distribution. I gave it 3.5 stars, and it has an average rating of 3.95 stars. I got 2 challenges completed out of this one. First, for the fairy tale sampler, 5 Chinese Brothers. That's a fairy tale I have not heard. Read a book with a 5 in the page count. Pretty self-explanatory. And also for the fairy tale spell out, I got the R in Frog Prince and the N in Ugly Duckling. I didn't realize that there was this, excuse me, novella that comes between book 1 and book 2 in the Rock Kiss series. I read book 2 in February and I really enjoyed it, so I decided to go back and read the novella. I listened to it on audio. It was only 4.5 hours long on audio, and you know, that's at normal speed, so I sped it up. I think I finished it in a day. It was a very, very spicy story considering how short it was. It was only 125 pages, like if you were going to read it in a physical copy or as an ebook. So this is the story of David and Thea, and David is the drummer for the band in the first book. The second book is the main characters from the first book, her best friend. So that's how the stories all kind of interconnect, and I think the third book goes back to a member of the band. But this guy, David, has been in love with Thea for years, and she is their publicist. And she doesn't want to essentially mix business with pleasure. So the entire first half of the book is him trying to convince her that a relationship would be a good idea. And they exchange these really fun memos. You know, very, very business oriented. Like, they sound very, very like, you know, they were written in a boardroom by some high ranking business person. But the actual, like, content of them is extremely steamy. Considering how short this book is, the steaminess factor was through the roof. But it was a really good story. I liked both of the characters. And yeah, if you're reading the Rock Kiss series, definitely go ahead and get this novella. It is available as part of the Audible romance package, so if you have that, you can listen to it for nothing. The next book that I finished was Royally Endowed by Emma Chase. I gave this book 3 stars. It was narrated on audio by Shane East. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. This is book 3 in the Royally series, so I have finished the series. It is done. Yay, I finished a series. It was narrated on audio by Shane East and Andy Arnett. It was published in 2017 by Emma Chase, LLC. I gave it 4 stars. It has an average rating on Goodreads of 4.20 stars. For the challenges, I got the Fairy Tale Sampler, Snake Prince. Read a book with a royal male, a prince, a king, an emperor, etc. Obviously this one fit. The main character wasn't the royal, he's one of the bodyguards. But of course the princes do factor in quite a bit in this one, the main characters from the first 2 books. And for Fairy Tale Spellout, I got the R in 3 Pigs and the E in Chicken Little. So, speaking of spicy books, yikes. But this one I really enjoyed. I honestly, I've loved all the books in this series, except for that novella that I talked about, I think, last week in my weekly reads. I didn't love the novella quite so much, because I just found it kind of pointless. But I really, really loved all 3 of the main books in this series. So this is Logan and Ellie's story. Now, Logan is one of the bodyguards who you meet in the first 2 books. And his job is essentially to bodyguard the princes. And Ellie is the main character, Olivia, from the first book. It's her younger sister. So this book actually begins following the timeline of books 1 and 2. And then continues on its own timeline after the events of the second book. So you're not rewatching a lot of the stuff from the first book. This one starts like towards the tail end of the first book, covers a good part of the second book, and then goes off on its own, you know, timeline wise. You're not reliving a lot of events. It's not like, you know, you're rehashing a lot of things that have already happened. Stuff is mentioned and you're like, oh yeah, you know, like in the first book, Olivia goes back to Westco to spend time with Nicholas, the older prince. And this is where this book starts, because Ellie's going to be left on her own. She's a senior in high school. And, you know, the Logan essentially is being tasked at looking after her for the summer. So no relationship starts off until much later on. The book actually starts off, you know, at a certain point with an event happening. And then the first chapter goes to 5 years earlier. So it traces the course of their relationship. It's a very slow burn. It's very, very spicy. This entire series is great. and I absolutely recommend it if you like the whole steaminess and the whole modern day royals. And like I said, it's really a lot of takes on the current monarchy in the UK or in England. A lot of similarities, at least I'm finding. So yeah, highly enjoyable, great series. So the next book that I finished wasn't actually part of my TBR. It has been added in after the fact. There are a lot of challenges that I'm currently participating in, and the problem is that some of them you don't find out what the challenge is until you have to read it, and you've got a week. For example, the Pass the Parcel challenge, you get a week to read the book. And for the bingo challenge, not the bingo challenge, yes, the bingo challenge, you get a week. So every week they're drawing a new category, essentially, and you don't know what that category is until it's drawn. So from going forward for the next while, my TBR, I'm still going to do TBR videos, but they're going to be, subject to change, if you will. So if I can fit other things in, I will. So this one I added on top of everything else that I'm reading. I do go to my TBR first. If a challenge is announced, I look through my TBR and see what I can find, and then go from there. But I just love participating in the challenges, and if that means that some things on my TBR don't get read in a certain month, I'm absolutely okay with that. That's part of the fun to me. I know a lot of people are mood readers and things like that. I'm a challenge reader. I love the thought of hunting out certain books to fit a challenge. So this one was for a challenge, and that's why I decided to read it, and I was able to get it from my library on audio. No, not from my library. I got this one from the Audible romance package. And that book is All I Ever Wanted by Kristan Higgins. This was narrated on audio by Exie Sands. It was published in 2010 by HQN Books. I gave it 4 stars, and it has an average rating of 3.98 stars on Goodreads. So I got 4 challenges out of this one. The Where Are You Reading challenge, I got the State of Vermont. The Fairy Tale Sampler, Dulhan, D-U-L-A-H-A-N. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. It's Read a Book with a Headless Body on the cover. Absolutely fits. The Fairy Tale Spellout, I got the A in Nightingale and the H in Elfmound. And this one, the challenge that I actually hunted this one out for is the Fairy Tale Bingo that I'm doing. I think I've mentioned this one before. So the first, each team has a different bingo card. We all have the same images on it, but each team has, like, they're all in different spots, you know what I mean? So the first category that was called was Beauty and the Beast, and it's probably the hardest one. And you need to read a book that has a lead male character who is not considered handsome. It's like, really? Guys, I hunted everywhere. I actually didn't start reading this book, I think, until Wednesday. I had the hardest time, and the worst part is that in the last, like late in the fall, even in the wintertime, like November, it must have been October or November, I read When Beauty Tamed the Beast by Eloisa James, which was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and the main male lead is not considered handsome. And then in February, I just read Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare, which is another Beauty and the Beast retelling, where the main lead is not considered handsome. I'm like, how have I read these 2 books within the last 4 months, and now all of a sudden I need them for a challenge? I kept Google searching, like, Beauty and the Beast retellings, and they take me to the list on Goodreads, and within the first 10 books, both those books would be mentioned. It was so unbelievably frustrating. So then I eventually found this one, and the male lead in this book, Callie, who's the female lead, Ian is the male lead. Callie jokes throughout the whole book that he looks like a Russian assassin and that he could kill her with his pinky. I mean, it's brilliantly funny. But I mean, of course, everybody finds different people handsome in their own right, but I guess I allowed it because he's not conventionally the typical romance novel hero who's like, not like the guy on the last cover for Royally Endowed. He's an average dude, and that's the kind of guy that we all want. Now, this is not one of my favorite Kristan Higgins books. I read this one years and years ago when it first came out, so it's probably been about 8 years. But I still really enjoyed it. And it was funny because there were certain things that happened in this book that, if I think about it later, I'm like, I remember a Kristan Higgins book where something like this happens. And then I listened to this one, I'm like, this was the book. So the entire story of this one is another woman who has been in love with the guy since they were kids. And they had he was her first kiss in the closet at a boy-girl party. And, then they grow up and she went away to college, and then she came home to this tiny little Vermont town, and he's running an advertising agency and she goes and works for them. So she's thinking maybe if they work together, maybe they'll fall for each other. And then an incident happens that pushes the two of them together, and they end up having a 5-week fling. Well, she's picturing that he's going to ask her to marry him and this and that, and he does not. He announces to her, actually, like this is well after the fling has ended, he told her that they kind of needed, it wasn't the right time for him. And so they ended up splitting up, and they'd been apart for well over a year. And then, you know, they kind of meet up for something, and she thinks, oh great, he wants to start the relationship again and all these things, and he announces to her that he's actually dating somebody else. And this person is coming to work for the company as well. So her best friends are pretty much telling her, you know, go find a new guy, make him jealous, that kind of thing. So she ended up starting a relationship with the local, the new veterinarian in town, who is Ian. And this book has some great laugh out loud moments. Her parents are divorced, and her dad cheated on her mother. And, you know, the dad wants the mom back. Like, this is the secondary plot line. And the mother says the only way she'll take him back is if she gets to meet all 3 of the women that he slept with when they were, like, when he was cheating on her. And hilarity ensues. It's just too funny. There's a great scene in this book that's in the last 8 years. In the back of my mind, I remember this being mentioned in a book, like I was saying, but I couldn't remember what book it was from. And when I heard it was this one, I actually rewound it a bit just to listen to it again. There's this great scene, and she's talking about having pets, and she's got a dog. And she says, you know, we tried to have a cat when we were kids. Oh yeah, her mother owns a funeral parlor. That's what I was going to say. So she grew up in a funeral parlor, or in a funeral home, not a parlor, but a home. And she's talking about this. And that they snuck in a cat when they were kids, and then the cat went missing. And they said, we found him 3 days later during Mr. So-and-so's wake when they opened up the casket, the cat jumped out. And I just thought, of all the things, like, to make it funny, you know what I mean? And the book starts off on her 30th birthday. So it does have a lot of parallels, I find, to All I Ever Wanted, or not All I Ever Wanted, The Perfect Match, in ways, you know, a guy that you love for years, you know, on the eve of a birthday, that's where the book starts out with, you know, meet a new guy. But it's fine, but they are so vastly different. Callie's a great character. She's adorable. She's spunky. She wants everybody to love her. And yeah, like I said, this wasn't my favorite, but it still ranks as a favorite book. Like, I just adore all of her books, and this just goes to show that even a book that I might not consider to be a favorite, I still highly recommend it. Now, Kristan Higgins is on the very low side of any kind of adult content. In this book in particular, there is none. It's mentioned, you know, like they get home from the date and he takes her upstairs. That's all that's mentioned. I will say, though, I noticed there was quite a bit of swearing in this one, which I found kind of not off-putting because it doesn't bother me, but I guess it was mostly from certain characters. It wasn't all the characters that did it, but I noticed it a lot with Callie's sister Hester. But that's the nature of the character, and I appreciated that. It wasn't all the characters that did it. It was only certain characters, and it was a character trait. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't all the time, but for a book that, for an author that you very rarely hear swearing in, to suddenly hear it even half a dozen times seems like a lot. And that's what I'm saying when I say a bit. It's like maybe a dozen times. So just keep that in mind if you want to read it. But I absolutely recommend it. Great on audio. Love Kristan Higgins. And the last book that I finished this week was Lemon Meringue Pie Murder by Joanne Fluke. This is book number 4 in the Hannah Swenson series, and it was published in 2004 by Kensington. I gave it 3.5 stars, and it has an average rating on Goodreads of 3.87 stars. 4 challenges done out of this one. The What to Read in 2018, task number 22. Click on Browse at the top and go to Lists. Scroll down to a particular list and pick one. So essentially you have to read from some of the top lists on Goodreads. And the book list that I picked was Best Cozy Mystery Series, and this was on here. For the fairy tale spell out, I got the L in Little Mermaid and the F in Frog Prince. This was a task for week 5 for the Cinderella team for the fairy tale challenge. And that was read a book where a character finds a body. Absolutely fit. And for the fairy tale bingo, this was for week 0, which was our free space, which was essentially just read any book that you want. And I happened to be almost done this one, so I counted it for the free space. This one was really cute. I know it sounds weird to say that. Oh, this was also, of course, my borrow category for March Mystery Madness. It's funny to say cute for a murder mystery, but they're cozy mysteries, so they're meant to be cute. In this book, Hannah's boyfriend, Norm, buys a house, and he's going into, with Hannah and her mother, to look at, like, antiques and if there's anything, because the house came fully furnished, if there's anything in there that they want. Well, while they're in there, they find the former owner, her dead body in the basement. And the story goes from there. These are books that I find, at least with me, and I'm not tooting my own horn when I say this because, you know, I pretty much think I have it figured out at the beginning. And in the cases of the last 2 books I have. For Blueberry Muffin Murder, I figured out who the killer was, like, when he was introduced. And same with these ones. I think because these take place in such a small town and there's such a vast array of characters in these small towns, that when they introduce a character who doesn't live in town or is new, you're kind of like, yep, pretty sure that's the killer. But still, it was a lot of fun watching Hannah try and figure it out and to see if you were right. You know, like, that's part of the fun in these as well. And it's funny, I think I mentioned this in another video, that these are the kind of books that when I'm reading them, I'm like, yeah, or, you know, before, yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that one. And then you start reading them and go, yeah, I really enjoy these books. They're so, you know, they don't take themselves seriously. They're a lot of fun. My only irk of the entire series, and I've seen other people mention this in reviews on Goodreads, but it's almost like Hannah goes to an extreme of explaining things, and it gets a little annoying. I can see her as being the kind of person that when you were in school, there was always that one kid in your class who had to be right, who had to explain it, who had a Hermione Granger kind of character from Harry Potter. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's this one scene in this book that really stuck out at me, and because Mike and Bill, the 2 police officers, tell her they don't want her to investigate the murder. And she's like, all right, I won't. But then everybody, like, her mother asks her to do it, Norm asks her to do it. You know, even though they have very comparable police officers, let's ask the girl at the local bakery to investigate it. But it's fun. But anyway, she calls Mike to tell him, and he's her other boyfriend, so she's kind of seeing 2 guys. But it's all very clean. Anyway, he laughs and he's like, oh, well, then I won the bet. And she's like, well, what bet? And he's like, I guess there was a pool going on at the police station to see how long it would be until Hannah started investigating this murder. And he's like, I won $120. And she says, well, how did you do that? And he's like, well, everybody put $10 in, and there were 12 of us, so I won $120. If you were explaining that to a normal person, they'd be like, oh, that's cool, 120 bucks, good job. No, Hannah has to go on to explain to him that he only won $110, and that because he already put $10 in. So, I mean, it's like little things like that that kind of made me go, really? Really? But again, character trait, I get it. I don't know if she's one of my favorite characters, but she is a lot of fun. I like the family. I like her sister, Andrea. Andrea has a lot of fun, and she's pregnant in this book. And yeah, I really love reading through the series in order because you kind of see these things change. And this one took place during the summertime, like around the 4th of July. So, you know, considering it's been quite cold out over the last few days, it was really, really nice to read a story that takes place in the heat of summer. So what am I currently reading? My current audiobook is Murder at the House of Rooster Happiness by David Casarett. This is book number 1 in the Ethical Chiang Mai Detective Agency, and it's being narrated on audio by Kristan. I'm enjoying this one. It's funny because I kind of keep going back and forth on it as I listen to it. I'm like, yeah, this is okay. It's all right. And then to other points where like, this is really good. I'll be interested to see at the very end what I actually thought about it overall. There's a lot of stuff in it that I'm enjoying. Other things are like, okay. So this is a story about an ethical nurse, and her name is Larissette, I believe is how you pronounce it. It takes place in Thailand, and the whole story is about a woman who brings her husband into the emergency room and he's already dead. And the guard on duty notices that he used to work at another hospital a few months ago, and he swears he saw the same woman come in with a different man who was also dead. So this detective has come to the main character and asked her to help him try and figure out what's going on. Now, she's what they call an ethical nurse. Now, I'm not familiar with this. I don't know if they have this here in North America, but she is a nurse who makes sure that ethics and, you know, things are done properly at the hospital. I guess in the case of I'm not sure what you would call that kind of person here in the U.S. or in Canada, but that's what she does. And there's a couple little mysteries going on with this one. There's also a man who seems to be hanging out in the waiting room of the ICU. There's an issue with an American couple that they were on their honeymoon in Thailand, and something happened with an elephant, and the man has almost died. He's brain dead. And they're trying to find out how to tell the family, you know, being American and then the Thailand and things like that. So there's kind of a lot going on. But this isn't what I would consider to be a classic murder mystery, because there's no whodunit. They're just kind of trying to, it's not like there's a list of suspects and a murder weapon and all these things. You know, they're just trying to figure out, you know, what's going on. But it's still really interesting, and I'm really interested to find out, you know, what this whole thing is with the woman and these dead husbands. You know, like, the narration on this is really good. Obviously, they got someone who speaks the local language, like for Thailand, because there's a lot of Thai words and things like that. And what's great is that they are said in that language and then kind of explained. The one thing that's kind of off-putting to me in this book, and it's not off-putting, but it's just that it's not off-putting that I don't like it. It's off-putting that it's done a lot, is that they keep comparing it to the U.S. because the main character, spent a year studying in Chicago. And she just keeps comparing everything to the way the U.S. does it. And how Americans are very gruff and how this and that. Now, this was written by, I believe, an American gentleman. He's actually a doctor. And, but it's just, the comparisons are at the first few are okay, but then it starts to really grate on you because it's often. But I am enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. I only have about 2 hours left on the audio, so I should definitely get it done tomorrow. My current ebook is Flawless by Heather Graham. This is the first book in the New York Confidential series. It is about jewelry bank robbers and FBI and a small Irish pub in New York. You wouldn't think that all three of those things go together, but they do. I'm really only a chapter into this. I just started it today, and yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. And the last thing I want to talk about is that I've actually picked up a physical book. One of my videos later this week, I think it's going to go up on Tuesday. I'm actually going to be doing a used book Harlequin haul. I was cleaning up some stuff over at a bookcase over on the other side of the room, and I had a stack of about 20 Harlequin novels that I bought used last year or whenever it was. And I'm like, oh, you know, I'll mark them down and maybe I'll get them on ebook. And I'm like, why? I own them in physical copy. I do find it difficult to read print books now. I like to read them. If I'm going to read them, I read them before I go to bed. It's not something I'm necessarily going to plop myself down on the couch with. But I thought, I won't add these as part of my TBR. They'll just kind of sit by my bedside, and if it takes me a week or two to finish one, so be it. But, you know, I thought I'll pick one off the shelf as I go. And then I went out today and decided to spend a little bit of money. And I'll talk more about that when I do the haul. But I bought another stack of them just because they're so ridiculously inexpensive at thrift stores. So that's great. But anyway, the first one I picked off my shelf is Secrets at Court. This is by Blythe Gifford. It is the first book in the Royal Wedding series. This is actually a medieval historical. So this is a Harlequin historical novel. I'm not absolutely sure what it's about. I picked it off the shelf. The throne of England is at stake, it says on the back. Gorgeous cover. So I'm looking forward to starting this one. I think it'll be a lot of fun to read a little bit every now and then, and to actually have a physical book. I just love these books, and yeah, I'm excited about getting into this one. So the last thing I'm going to show you guys before I let you go is, of course, what I'm working on this weekend knitting-wise. Let me open up the bag. My shawl. I'm giving my shawl a little bit of love in my adorable Christmas Santa skinny dipping bag. This is the Free Your Fade shawl by Andrea Maury. I will leave a link in the description box below to the pattern on Ravelry in case you're curious to checking it out yourself. This is a really easy pattern. If any of you want to learn how to knit, I have a lot of people mention, I wish I could. You know what? It's really, really easy. It's not difficult. You just need to find, I think, something that you love. I'm completely self-taught. I completely taught myself off of YouTube. Now, in the years since, I do have family. My mother used to knit. She still does. My aunt knits. My grandmother knits. So if I have questions, I do have them to go to. But 99% of the time, I will search it on YouTube, and there will be a way to show you how to do it. And if any of you guys are knitting and you do have questions, not that I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to help. So this is the Free Your Fade shawl. So I'm into, of course, the second color. There's not much of a change since the last time. Guys, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. That little marker is where I was the last time I showed it to you guys about a month ago. So it doesn't look like I made a lot of progress, but these rows, guys, are getting super long. I think I've got like 200 stitches on the needles. So yeah, I mean, this is a really easy pattern. You're literally knitting back and forth. You've got to do an increase on the one end, and that's it. And then every 20 rows, excuse me, sorry, you're doing these little holes, which are so simple, absolutely so simple to do a yarn over. If, you know, just search it on YouTube and see how to do a yarn over, dead simple. But yeah, I really, really love this, and it's a really, really easy pattern, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, so that is what I am working on this weekend. And a quick little update, my car, because I know a lot of you who watched, excuse me for reaching, who watched my vlog, and thank you so much, everybody. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. I got a lot of comments asking me to do more. I will. I definitely will. Maybe, you know, I'll do just a weekend reading vlog just for funsies, like in April or May, or maybe even over the Easter long weekend at the end of the month. That might be fun too, right? But I definitely want to do it for the 24 and 48 read-along in the summertime. I'm definitely going to do another one then. And yeah, so the car. I got the car back on Tuesday. I was hoping to get it back Monday, and I think I mentioned to you guys on Monday. No, because I'm sure you guys probably got the update. But yeah, I picked my car up on Tuesday. Guys, it drives like it's brand new. I had been having this cracking and popping noise for like since before Christmas, and you kind of learn how to deal with it. Like, I wasn't making really tight turns, you know, I wasn't doing anything too quickly because I knew that this cracking and popping noise was there. And so you kind of change how you drive in a way, right? And I've been doing it for like over 2 months, that all of a sudden, now that I have a car that actually it's doing what it's supposed to be doing driving wise, that it's like, oh my gosh, I can like do a U-E and it's not going to make a noise. And, you know, it took me a few days this week to kind of get into doing it. And like driving like a normal person, driving the car as I would normally drive a car. So yeah, I'm really, really happy to have it back. And yeah, anyway guys, that's it. This video's gone on long enough. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below what you're reading this week, or have you read any of these books and what did you think about them? And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.